This episode of Muddy River Gems is brought to you by Dot Foods.
I think what it comes down to is the culture and the people.
Our culture here at Dot is like no other. I've never experienced anything like what I've lived with for the last 12 years.
Dot is very diverse.
It is truly a family-owned business, but it is a family inside and out.
You always feel like you matter and you play a big hand in the pot.
There's so many opportunities to make a difference at Dot and really contribute to the success of the organization.
It's been more than 20 years since this old Pillsbury site in Springfield has been used for its intended purpose. And in those 20 plus years, it's really fallen on hard times. But in this edition of Muddy River Gems, brought to you by Dot Foods, we'll learn that there are some very positive developments around here. From 1929 until, I guess, Chris Richmond, about 2001, this was a working plant. Originally the Pillsbury plant. It was a huge operation. Something like 1,500 people worked here at one time. Yeah. And so now, since 2001, for about 20 years, it's been abandoned. It's been run down. It's been a safety hazard. It's been a problem. Until your group came along, moving Pillsbury forward, and for the last couple of years, you've been trying to make use of this. So tell us about it.
We have, this has been a huge, community challenge for a generation now. So about 4 years ago, we took up the project. We put together a working group that eventually then formed into a not-for-profit. And just about 20 months ago, we took possession of the property. Since then, we've rolled up our sleeves, we've worked with volunteers, we've worked to clean up the property and get it to the point where it's prepared for demolition. Mm-hmm. It's a $10 million project.
Wow.
We've raised a little over $6 million in commitments at this point. Right now, we're working through government regulation and review so that we can get the green light to move ahead with demolition activities and some remediation activities. But until then, we've got it cleaned up. We're working with volunteers and we're working with the community to do historic tours of the site. We're interviewing former employees, which has been great fun. And we've been working with artists throughout the summer.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. In fact, we're going to show some of that later in this program. You've found objects here, the historical objects, and you've made a little museum display where you've got artists coming from other parts of the country,
right,
to be able to do some of their graffiti and artwork on the walls here, and you've been able to draw crowds just as an art show, which is a remarkable thing.
Right. It's been a lot of fun for us here the last couple of months, and something wholly unexpected. But it's really turned into a good thing. One thing we've learned with moving Pillsbury forward is to do a project like this, you have to be able to coordinate and partner with the community. Mm-hmm. And this was an unanticipated partnership with our graffiti artists.
You thought they were trespassing, right?
That's right, that's right.
In fact, they probably were, but you turned it into a positive.
Yes, initially they were, but we engaged them, we talked to them about how we could both mutually benefit from this, just like we have with many of our other partners involved in the project. How do we mutually benefit? How do we advance our community and bring something special for our community? And they have really come through, and it's been a lot of fun.
As we walk this way, we get a sample of some of the work that you've done just recently. But as we do, point out some of these, what are these buildings were used for? Because it's just a massive complex.
Right, we're a massive complex. This concrete deck we're standing on now is a little over 200,000 square feet. It was at one time a massive warehouse filled with forklifts and pallets loading boxcars and trucks. Mm-hmm. We've got the grocery mix building over here, this 5-story building.
Okay.
It was built in 1929, and that's where the brownie mix and the pancake mix and the cake mixes were made. And then, as we look over to this side, we've got buildings that are known as the bakery mix tower. And the bakery mix is where they provided goods right here at the Pillsbury site that would go to institutions and large-scale bakeries. I understand now that they actually made Kentucky Fried Chicken batter in this building. Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Look, now, these are called silos? Is that what they're
Right. And so as we walk up and we look over here, right in front of us is the footprint of a 50,000 square foot warehouse that we had to take down.
Now, this is the rubble we're looking at.
Yep, the
Okay.
rubble, the bricks and rubble. It was a collapsing warehouse with heavy wood beams, and it was just a severe safety hazard. It had been there since originally 1929, and then just beyond that, we've got the silos that stored the wheat as it went into the flour mill. And at the end here, we've got one of the flour mill buildings. We know this is known as the C mill. And it went into service in the late 1930s as a flour mill, and then continued milling flour for decades. And the tall building at the middle, that's the head house, the grain elevator. So the wheat would come in either by truck or by train. It would go into the head house, go up to the top, get weighed and sorted, and then it would go across what they call the gallery above the silos, and then it would get stored in the silos.
It would drop down in there, and then you would have each of those creates or contains probably a different product, so you know what's in each one, and you just go get it when you need it, or they would have just
Right, and we've learned from the former employees that there are 160 silos, and they each held about 18,000 bushels of grain.
What a huge operation. Now, of course, this warehouse that we're looking at with this rubble, this concrete rubble, that you already hauled away a lot, and this is all going to get hauled away at some point, right?
Yes, we have. We've hauled away about 500 tons worth of material since we've been on site. About 300 of it came from this old warehouse, and 200 tons of material came from just cleaning up the general grounds of the property to get it prepared for demolition.
And in the end, when you take the $10 million project, it's going to cost that much just to dismantle all this and to haul it away, won't it?
Well,
Or more.
the fun thing is I've been working with demolition contractors, and project design is critical in a thing like this. We've got over 20 structures, and I've interviewed and discussed and worked with multiple demolition contractors. And what's going to happen here is we're actually going to recycle 95+% of everything on the site.
So it is usable. It is
It
usable.
is. We are going to take that silver coating off the silos. We'll have it blasted off of there, such that we can then recycle 70,000 tons of concrete from those silos, and use it for road base and rock fill for other projects in the community. And then these bricks, these piles of bricks, they will be ground up and used to fill in the 47,000 square feet of basement space that we have here at this site. And then of course we'll pull out all the rebar and all the metal and get it off to the recycler. So when we look at the bulk weight, we've got about 175,000 tons of material here.
It's mind-boggling.
And 95% of that will be recycled either here on site or at other places in the community.
Let's walk this way, because we've been talking about the fact that you've been able to make this a community, sort of a central place for the community. Some of the families had, families of those who worked here, and others that live in the neighborhood, others that are just in Springfield or around Springfield who care about, the project. But you've got a series of benches here where you've had people come to either get talks on the history of Pillsbury, or to look at the artwork, or to see the objects that you've pulled out. So it's kind of neat. You actually have this as a little central area where people can gather and learn stuff.
Right. So we have a gathering area. From time to time we have events and public tours and historic tours at the site that we give now. And we actually recycled the locker room benches right out of the locker room.
They came right out of
building.
You didn't have to bring anything in. It was all here.
And we used the 2x16s that came from the collapsed warehouse to anchor those two. So we've got folks can sit on benches here of a nice day, and we can give them an historic overview of what's going on with the Pillsbury project. and give them an opportunity to learn about the history in Springfield of flower manufacturing.
And when we talk about you drawing a crowd, I mean, you recently had an event where more than 300 people came to look at the artwork, the graffiti artwork, and also to look at some of the old mixers and some of the historic things that you pulled out and put into a little gallery, which is really neat. We're going to get to see that in this program.
It's been exciting how much this project has resonated with the community. I really had no idea when we started how many people in the community had a family member that worked here at Pillsbury. But you know, back in the 1950s, mid 1950s, they had 1,500 people working at this site.
It's incredible.
So when you fast forward, you know, 50, 70 years, a lot of people had a grandmother or a grandfather that worked here, or an uncle, and many of them have come to our tours, whether they're the art events or the historic tours that we've given.
Phil Aleo, you worked at the Pillsbury plant for from 1980 until roughly 91, I guess, when Cargill came in and bought out Pillsbury. What did you think when you came back and saw what they were attempting to do here?
That's when I met Chris, and I had always wanted to come back just to see what it looked like and just maybe get pictures of my own. And to see the bad shape that it was in was horrible. And that took a lot of the good memories away. But to see what Chris was trying to go ahead and do to it for the future, I couldn't envision it, but I got a good idea after he explained it to me and stuff. But to tear down a lot of the buildings and stuff, I think, my God, this is a massive undertaking he's on to.
It is.
And I didn't understand how he was actually going to go about doing it, but I was just grateful for the bit of a tour he gave me to come back.
Yeah. Did you get any warm memories, or was coming back not a warm memory at all? Say, I'm glad I don't work there anymore.
No, they were mostly positive. That because every time you look around at certain things, tore up or not, you still have those memories of what you might have been doing back then, who you might have seen, friends, which you haven't seen since 91. So it was mostly a positive deal. But you know, you kind of hope something good would come out of it, because you don't want to leave the memory of Pillsbury in the good times looking like that. Especially after the last people who owned it, the salvage company, left the shape it was in.
It was sad. It was sad the way it worked. It's much better now.
Yes.
I'm looking at that middle tower, that silver tower there. That's where you worked?
Yes, I sure did.
What did you do in there?
Various jobs, actually, but there's long belts that run the length of the elevator bins. And then there's a machine that went across it, and it would put the wheat in the bins, and it would come down this long conveyor. And the guy upstairs on the scale floor would call and say, hey, I need you to move what was called the tripper. And that was the machine. The belt would come up it and then go down, looked like spider arms on it. And then it would drop down there and drop into each one of those bins, or whichever one that he wanted the wheat to go in. So basically it was moving machines around to go ahead and put the wheat in the bins. Then if you had the next day, your job would have been maybe to take the wheat out at the bottom, underneath in the basement, on different bins. They would want you to blend it together. 5 different kinds of wheat. They're not all the same wheat. So that was it. Then sometimes it would not be a good job cleaning up the wheat that was spilled on the floor. You had to do those kind of jobs too. I mean, it was all part of the deal. And then unload train cars. So it was basically, as a utility man, 3 to 4 different jobs in your classification. And then you had the scale man, a different classification. And then you had the head man, that was another one. And then you had spout man. But when I hired in 80, it was a lot different than it was when I left in 91. It had been upgraded. They had eliminated 2 or 3 different jobs in the elevator. So it became more automated, and you can see what the future was. It was trying to get rid of as many employees.
Fewer men, yeah, and women, yeah.
Yes, yes, all employees, yeah.
Save money. Robert Nazrum, you're an archaeologist in your former professional life.
That was my day job.
Your day job, right? But you've gotten involved as a volunteer with this effort, and you know enough about objects of history that you've been able to curate a little museum here, which is really kind of neat. You've gone through all these old buildings and collected a lot of stuff, and it might look like junk at the time, but you clean it up and bring it down here. It makes sense in a lot of cases, doesn't it?
It might still look like junk, but yeah, we spent a couple of months going through 500,000 square feet of abandoned factory.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that I was struck by was how little was left. You know, it's been pretty cleaned out, beginning when Pillsbury was kind of cannibalizing itself before it was taken over. But we find these little bits, and so, you know, it's not a comprehensive history museum. It's more about just these little traces of the technology and how it changed, but also traces of the employees and their lives here.
The fact is, though, you could spend a very interesting hour or two poking through this stuff and trying to figure out what the heck it was used for. I love these bombs. You call this a lemon bomb. What were these used
we've been
for?
calling these flavor bombs. We found these on like the fourth floor of the bakery mix tower. And that you'll see there's 3 of them here, and they're all painted different colors. These actually contained artificial flavorings. This one's lemon, that one was vanilla, that one was nutmeg. And it was shot through this big industrial system down through the floors to flavor various kinds of cake mixes and stuff that were used in restaurants. And when we found we opened the vanilla one, it still smelled like vanilla after 25 years. So that was a little strange. But yeah, I just love these because they were probably made here. You know, there was a metal shop here, and they're very sculptural, but they make stuff as needed here. They made stuff as needed here, and this is a product of somebody working down in the metal shop.
They said, we need a container that fits like this and that will do this job, and they go ahead and then they draw one up and they make it.
Yeah, just like over here.
They did some of these here.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. It's like we need a certain kind of scoop, and you can see it's crudely made, but it does the job. And I just love the fact that these aren't manufactured items. These are, it's like little bits of folk art.
Made on site by guys who were,
I mean, who knows
one of
what
the
this is
foremen
for.
would come up and say, hey, look, I don't know what to call it, but we need something to do this.
Right.
And they would go ahead and make it.
Right, they describe it, and they made it. And so it's some of my favorite things to find is the things that were made here on site.
Yeah. There's all kinds of, a lot of gizmos here, a lot of electric.
Gizmos is a good word.
I mean, now I don't recognize any of that stuff.
Neither do I. I mean, there's technology here that dates from the 1930s through the 1990s, and it's interesting that, I mean, sure, there are engineers and other folks out there that know what this stuff is, but it's also just interesting how archaic and extinct some of this is becoming to us. Doesn't take long.
I like this because now look, this was actually made for the milling business because it's called Milltronic. This one was one that was used probably in other locations as well, but some of these may have been devised just like these metal objects were, just to sort of fill a need here.
Yeah, sometimes we find the tags because they've pulled this out of a bigger device and they've said what's wrong with it, and we find this in the machine shops. And that's cool. Again, you get a sense of the people who are working here. This one just says good.
Yeah. This one works. You don't have to mess with this one.
It still works.
Yeah. Okay. And look at all the old handsets.
Yeah, those were for the intercom system in the mill, so the various millers could speak to each other.
One of the guys told me that over in the elevator house, they had one computer.
Yeah.
for the whole place.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, there was analog kind of computing devices.
Look at these sewing machines and the typewriter. Look at how.
Yeah, those sewing machines go way back, and that's for stitching up bags, of course.
Ah, okay.
You know, but
never throw a bag away, right? Just
they're flour bags, you know, and so then part of this is just the beauty of decay. I mean, a whole bunch of this. I mean, I've curated art shows that are about decay, and so this is just it's a typewriter. It is of no historical significance whatsoever, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is
because of what's happened to it.
And you know what? That's probably the rest of this plant was in that condition too, just like that, and which is all rusting away and just.
That's kind of the idea in here is that you can look at this without like falling through a floor. A lot of this is kind of hard to get to now.
Yeah, you don't want people roaming around in unsafe places, so you bring it here.
Yeah.
And this is kind of tells a story too, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, Cargill took over, and after Pillsbury was bought out, and they were here for 10 years, and they laid off the bulk of the staff. They cut wages, they changed people's jobs around, and you know, by all accounts from the former employees, made life a real drag here at the factory. And this is somebody's, you know, Cargill helmet, and I think it kind of speaks to the
story, doesn't it?
The attitude at the time. It seems like it was a grim time.
We'll be back with more from the old Pillsbury site on Muddy River Gems, brought to you by Dot Foods.
From our trucks to their lunch trays, to your local hospital, to your favorite pub, and to your kitchen table. For more than 60 years, Dot Foods and Dot Transportation have been stocking the shelves of your hometown. Sure, we've grown a lot, but at our core, we're still small-town, family-run businesses that care about our communities and the people who keep us running. Join the Dot family today and be part of something bigger.
Why work at Dot?
You could list out individual qualities forever.
There's a lot of opportunities. They take care of the employees, they take care of the community.
So our pay, our benefits, it's competitive. Time off, tons of flexibility.
They're willing to work with you to help you advance.
Robert, you're a man with many hats. You're history curator over there, art curator over here.
Yeah.
You are an artist yourself. You do some sculpting.
Actually, I started in art.
The interesting story is, I think, the fact that this just kind of happened. The fact that you have art to show the public here, and it just happened. I mean, it was kind of a mistake, wasn't it?
Well, it just happened because we had exactly the right social soup. Shock and Static had been in this building painting before it was acquired by moving Pillsbury forward. And we were fans of their work. We were photographing it, right? I knew their work. And there was a time where suddenly we had a sense that they were back here because new pieces were appearing. And turns out we encountered them on the outside of one of the buildings. And normally when that happens in a Grayfield industrial demolition project, it doesn't go well for anybody, but it went really, really well for us because we were glad to meet them, and we basically invited them to stick around, and we called them artists in residence. So it was cool, but it didn't just happen. It had to be all the right personalities figuring out.
Yeah, well, it's not unusual to find trespassers or people poking around for the wrong reasons in a place like this. They were poking around for the right reasons. So
they're very serious artists, and that's the thing that you need to know about graffiti is that it's not right to look at it as vandalism. It certainly has nothing to do with gangs. These are artists, and they work here for a lot of very complicated reasons, and as you'll see with the imagery, they're very accomplished painters.
And this is one of the opportunities, again, to get the community involved in this project, because you have days when you invite the public into view and take a look at all this, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about these exhibits is that it's rare in two ways. A, you get to look at a massive industrial complex that's been abandoned for 20 years in a safe way, and B, you get to get up close and personal with an art form that is often completely inaccessible unless you happen to be at a train crossing when there's a boxcar that goes by, right? So you know, there's a lot of art out there that people don't get to see, and in this case, you get to even meet the artists, which is just wonderfully cool.
Can I interrupt your work?
Yeah.
Shock, is that right? Shock?
Yep.
It looks to me like you're covering up some of the work that you already did. Are you starting over there?
Yeah, I'm just kind of redoing this section. It was a section I was struggling with for a little while, and I just got an idea for it, so I'm just kind of redoing it.
Do you do that a lot? I mean, different things occur to you and you say, no, I don't like that, I'm gonna do it over?
Yeah. I try to not do it as often as possible, but it happens a lot, yeah.
How did you find this location to start doing painting?
So my friend Static, he originally found it a few years ago and came out here, and we were still living up in Minneapolis, and he said, I found the coolest abandoned building in the entire world. And he knows a lot of abandoned buildings. So
he's been in them, and this is a cool one.
Yeah, so I was like, well, I got to go check it out. So we drove down here in 2021 and painted a few things and explored for a little bit. And then we were coming back from St. Louis and coming to check this place out. And our car broke down and we were stuck here, and that's kind of how this all started.
Can we walk down this way? We can look at some of your work as we go.
Yeah.
Now, you and your partner looking for interesting places to paint.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that you were welcomed here instead of booted out?
Yes. That was probably the biggest surprise of my life. Usually it does not go that way. You know, that was not what I was expecting. You know, I saw those guys in the truck and thought it was going to be a different kind of situation than it was. And
this is a massive surface. How do you get up? I guess you got ladders. Huh?
I got ladders. Yeah.
Of course, you're pretty tall too. That helps.
It does. It does.
Do you have a name for this work?
Not yet.
Do you usually name your work?
Not usually, but something like this I probably would. Something bigger. I mean, usually the name comes to me like after the fact, or like, you know, I'll see something in it that it's like, oh, that should be called that or whatever. But no, I try to name it after the fact usually.
Do you not? I'm kind of art stupid. Do you find yourself having to explain your art to people sometimes?
Yeah, and it's good. It's a good challenge. It forces me to think about it and figure out what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Explain this part of this to me then.
Okay, so here we've got kind of the whole kind of theme is sort of this like ancient, futuristic, but also current. So these are all just kind of a collage of pictures and sketches that I've taken. So there you've got this lifted truck driving through the streets of, I think it was a picture from Detroit. And then I wanted to do like a gas station with Roman columns and kind of like a hovercraft.
I love it.
You know, so it's like this futuristic, but also ancient. This is kind of this like, it's like different people doing different things, like going down these kind of ramps, and it's basically all this like, there's all these people working in different ways around here, and all of their kind of energy and what they're working on is going up into this orb in the middle. And then you've got over here is like the industrial area. There's going to be the Pillsbury factory, and then it's kind of like turns into this abandoned building wasteland, and you're going to see like, you know, people going from the factory job to now they're, you know, sawzalling through stuff, and you know, it's just sort of like, I wanted to represent the shifting landscape of kind of what happened when the factories closed.
Yeah, like this.
And then there's also just a lot of like weird, funny stuff in there too. You know, just sort of like stuff I'm having fun with.
Whimsical stuff.
Yeah. My work is always kind of a mixture of like something, a theme and not a theme. And then, you know, it's just about color and where things go and, you know, making it look interesting.
Shock, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
For sure. Yeah, come check it out when it's done. It'll be pretty spectacular.
Ray White, you worked here for 18 years.
Yep, from 73 to 91.
Till 1991. That was a banner year because that was the year Pillsbury sold it to Cargill, and a lot of people left at that time.
Right.
But where we're standing right now would have been right in the middle of a big warehouse.
Warehouse
In fact, this complex is full of warehouses, wasn't it?
All the first floor on every building that you see here, except for that small one over there, that was our, but all these big buildings, all first floor is warehousing. One way or another we used it. I drove a forklift here for the better part of those 18 years. But clear over there where you can't see A and B, there's two warehouses over there. That one there is number 3. Where all the rocks piled.
Yeah, we talked about that one. Yeah,
that's where all the ingredients were stored for grocery. And there was bays and bays and bays in there. Just
When you come back, do you ever, or do you have fond memories, or do you get nostalgic about, or emotional in any way?
No, yeah. Especially when you first came in. I first came in here, it was a hazy day. It wasn't real bright like it is now. And I look out and I go, okay, where am I at? I had to reorient myself to where I was at and where things were. And Chris, he was thinking that, well, this was at warehouse 4 here. I said, no, this is, correcting him on which ones. And we walked through all the warehouses in order to get him in line on how things were.
Yeah, you were a big help because he needed to know the layout, didn't he?
Yeah, he wanted to know the layout.
Yeah.
And, he'd been up in the buildings, but the first floor, all these warehouses, it was foreign to him, so I helped him out on that. It was a very interesting job to work.
Polly Poskin, there's a lot going on. I mean, we've seen a lot of activity here at the old Pillsbury site. And, it's kind of, you almost say to yourself, oh, but it's going to be torn down. I mean, that's the best case scenario, is it's not going to be here. It's going to be gone, even though you have this beautiful stuff going on. So let's talk about the future. Yes. What's the timetable?
Well, we're looking at probably, it could be 18 months, maybe less. We're still working on some approvals with our federal HUD and our federal EPA. We just submitted a $2.5 million grant to the EPA, our second one.
To help you
to do the abatement.
Get the resources to bring it down.
Yes, to get the abatement. We got to get that silver coating off of the silos, and that's a mammoth job. So we're building the stack. We're probably at about 6.2 million. We'd like to get right at 10, and that would do the abatement and that'd do the demolition. Now, and it would be a clear site.
Yeah, now most of this money obviously can have to come from grants.
Yes.
The public can help a little bit, but I mean, you can't raise $10 million from, with a tip jar.
No.
So even though they can help, you're still looking at big time money grants from the feds and the state, I guess. Huh?
Yes, and our city and our county. So yeah, it becomes a government project. And government is the people, and the people created this site. It was an economic driver. It served the community, the city, the county. So it's time for it to move on and make a launch pad for a new development.
We learned from Chris that about 95% of this, once you can get the abatement done, 95% of this can be recycled. So there's hope there.
Yes.
The other thing is though, when you do get it cleared, what are the plans? Would it be an industrial site or a business park or
well,
what
ideally, yeah, either one of those. I mean, ideally it would be some kind of light industry, some kind of mixed business, site, so that there's opportunity for people in the neighborhood and whatever to work, and for people to come back to this area of town. We hope that by the tours that we've done and the art exhibits and the opening up of the site, that people are understanding and learning, say, this area of town, and good things happen here, and it's a good place to be and to come to. So we're trying to set that stage. So we think that'd be very appealing to a developer, that we've done some groundwork for them in terms of the community relationship and understanding of why this needs to be part of Springfield development.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
They're about halfway there in the resources needed to clear this site, and in about 18 months, we should be able to find out just how they're doing. This is another Muddy River Gem brought to you by Dot Foods. Thanks for watching.
This episode of Muddy River Gems was brought to you by Dot Foods.